Hi, I'm William Stewart. Welcome back to our verse by verse study on the book of Hebrews. Welcome. We are in chapter 11, the great hall of faith, where the author goes through many of the major characters in the Old Testament, particularly up to the time of David and Solomon, when the kingdom and the Davidic line is being established. And he does this, it seems, ostensibly, to put into the Greek mindset of these young, spiritually Hellenized Jews. We think they're probably Hellenized, as most Jews were outside of Palestine, where they lived in the Roman Empire, and probably many Jews inside Palestine as well, were Hellenized in dress and culture and language, Greek language. So placing Old Testament thinking of into Greek thought. And as we've mentioned before, that the Jews were people of action. So when they heard the Hebrew word Shema, it meant that they heard the person, they believed it, and acted on it. And this is a major expression of faith. I'd say the major expression of faith in the Old Testament. Now, confidence, surety, faith are often also mentioned. So, but yet in the Greek way of thinking, there's almost a intermediary step of belief, the faith, and then action after a person's come to belief on Christ. So, of course, salvation is by faith in all sections of the Bible, Old Testament Gospels, and in the epistles, and in the tribulation. So the author here updates, in a sense. The Bible is a progressive book. There's more and more information that God reveals as it goes along, and he puts that Old Testament rendering of faith and looking towards salvation in a New Testament context, and saying that these fathers of the Jewish faith, religion were faithful people looking for eternal home. So we finish up the patriarchs today. After Abraham, there's Isaac and Jacob. And again, I think that these patriarchs are there not only for the promises of Abraham, but the generations afterwards to really teach the Israelites how to live in the land, once they return, what to avoid and what to do. So we're in verse 20 to 22 today. By faith, again, there's that word faith, Isaac, so this is the son, the promised son of Abraham, blessed. The word here, logos in the Greek, means literally to say good things about. Well, logos, good word. Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. So we know, of course, that Jacob got the primary blessing here. So he's telling them, he's conferring on them a desire for good things to come. He's doing this by faith because he has to trust God that in the context of which they would live and God's faithfulness to them, that good things would come, the things that God would have for them, each individually as God chose, as we recognize in Romans 9. Verse 21, by faith Jacob, so the son of Isaac, who again is the really got the major inheritance by God's choice, when he was dying, blessed the sons of Joseph. This is in Genesis 47, whereas the blessing to Jacob originally was in Genesis 27. Both the sons of Joseph. Now, Joseph was the last son of Jacob. He was a special case, a type of Christ, ruled Egypt and saved the family as the head of Egypt and blessed his two sons. So his two sons replaced Joseph as tribal members, Ephraim and Manasseh, in the distribution of tribes when the Jews left Israel. So he blessed them specifically, saying again, good things to come. Leaning, and this word has been in there, it's in the Hebrew of shahah in the original text, and the King James supplies it, upon the top of a staff. So he worshiped, probably meaning bowing down. commentators seem to be consistent on this, bowing down, leaning on his staff, because he was old, as he worshiped. And this is what was done in the Old Testament, that's conferred, intimated by the word in the Septuagint, the Old Testament translation from the Hebrew to the Greek, proskunuo, also used in the New Testament in the Gospels. Verse 22, by faith Joseph, when he died, so his turn, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel and gave them commandment concerning his bones. Otherwise, when Israel left Egypt, Joseph wanted his bones taken back to the promised land. So by faith, why did he do this? So again, he's trusting in God his showing his faith that God would perform his promises, and that there would be a great nation, that there would be Messiah. And so by faith, he said, let them take me back to Israel, because I know that's where we're going. So why the issue of the bones? Probably out of context here, out of interest. We know that that at the Passover in Exodus 12, that the Passover lamb was to be eaten, and in its preparation, the bones would not be broken. And then interestingly, in Psalm, again, this is where so much typology, the New Testament always completes it. The typology in Psalm 34:20, that the Messiah in prophecy, the bones would not be broken. And then this is completed in the gospel when Christ was on the cross, the bones were not broken. Why is this? Well, we don't know exactly. I think it probably relates to the fact that to really crush a man, you broke his bones, almost a final defeat. The man couldn't stand. But yet Christ's bones were not broken. Christ was not defeated. And so perhaps by taking the bones back of Joseph, who was a type of Christ, indicates the final victory of Israel and the coming kingdom that God would provide, as Christ's victory was intimated on the cross by his bones not being broken. That might be controversial. It's how I see it. Look at the scripture and decide for yourself. Okay, so we've covered the faith of Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, that God would do what he said he would do, looking towards the future, to a coming kingdom and a promised land that was eternal with God, otherwise salvation and an eternal home, eternal hope. God keeps his promises to both Israel and us as Christians. Thanks be to God. See you next time.